excited for this conversation, kind of getting the band back together, as maybe some of the listeners may not know. Jon and I used to work together back in the day at Family Office Metrics. So it's nice to reconnect and to have a chance to catch up. And I know this conversation is going to be great. So why don't we just start off? Let's talk about Jon Carroll and family and what's going on with that. I think there's a rumor, Jon, that you were retired, but I think that was a short-lived.
Well, thanks. Thanks for that intro, Mark. And yeah, Jon Carroll and family is basically Jon Carroll here and Liz Luland there on your screen. And then also Liz's husband, Clayton Luland. And Clayton, along with Liz, did work at Family Office Metrics, with me and others, including you for a while. And I did, after my experience at EY, decide to, retire and we moved to Portugal. After I did that, I got called by some people. I got called by, three or four different offices asking me, could I help them on this, that, or the other thing? And all of the assignments sounded interesting and were fitting in with my allocation of time that I wanted to give away from, spending time with my family. That went on, really until earlier this year. I was talking to Liz and I said, Liz, it'd be great to do something with you and Clayton again. I mean, I don't know what it is, Mark, but I said, I'd love to get back working with you. And so we talked about it because Liz has her own consulting practice, as you may know. There's got to be a way that we can kind of put these things together in something called Jon Carroll and Family. So what we've got sort of two tracks going. One is Jon Carroll and Family, where we do some consulting, advisory work. And then the other track is what we're calling the Family Office Project, which is really going to be content opportunity, Mark, to get the band back together, as you say. You got to jump at it. I mean, I'm obviously not getting any younger, so this just feels great to me. And I'm super happy and super excited about the things because we've talked about quite a few things. We'll go through some of that with you today about what we're working on and what we'd like to do in the future.
Let's talk about the consulting aspect of it, family office. I think especially in the areas of technology, certainly they can be single family houses in particular can be a little insular just by their nature. When should a family office think about bringing in a consultant and what sort of value can a consultant provide?
Well, that's a tricky question. I think that any client or a family office especially should hire a consultant when they're out of their depth, when they just don't know enough about the subject matter to really feel confident that they can make a competent decision. Because that's what it's really all about. That's really the goal of the consultant is to educate his client or her client to be able to make a competent decision. And good consultants will go through a process. They've got a structured process of learning and educating, at the end of which there'll be some sort of recommendation. They'll have a ranking, first choice, second choice, or whatever, based upon certain criteria that they've understood are important and key, critical to the decision making by the client, and then the client takes it from there, right? So that's the purpose. Now, the flip side is sometimes consultants can get in the way and muck it up. And by that, I mean, can get in between the client and the vendor, let's say, after a decision is made, and can create more misunderstandings and than understanding. So it's sort of a mixed bag, and you got to know what you're doing when you hire a consultant, right? You need to make sure that that consultant has done this sort of thing before. I mean,
right.
Precisely the kind of job that you're asking this consultant to help you with, that person should be able to say, yeah, I've been there, done that. I can give you references. It shouldn't be a mystery, and it should be very straightforward and almost a checklist mentality that you can go through as a buyer of consulting help that will enable you to, to evaluate different consultants, because there's a lot of consultants.
Yeah.
And
More so, it's a popular industry
the
now.
thing about it is that, it's a very low barrier to entry. I
Right.
mean, you lose your job, now you're a consultant. And that's fine. I'm not knocking that. Everybody's got to start somewhere. But I'm just saying that, experience, specific experience and technical capability, and also communication skills, key. And Liz,
John, we've seen them where family offices will bring in, they want some help. They bring in outside perspective, but there really isn't a commitment to change. So then when the consultant makes recommendations on changes, and as you know, Liz, like change is hard, right? So there's resistance to change, no matter, how thoughtful it is or whether it's the right direction, right? It impacts people's lives, it impacts their days. There isn't always buy-in on that case. So I think that's a good perspective about, it's not just a consultant, but, you got to also take a look at the project and then, really at the end of the day, the client's commitment to change, because they got to come in and bring recommendations. And if you just continue to do things the same old way, I don't think that's what the consultant's going to recommend, right?
it happened rarely in my career, but there were occasions where the client really was not going to take our advice. We were recommending that they do something, and they said, no, we're not going to do that. And so we had to part ways. A consultant, implies that it's a short-term kind of relationship, whereas outsourcing implies a longer-term relationship. Same thing, though. They have a lot of the same requirements, right? Do you understand? Have you done this? Do you understand our business? Do you have the experience? Are the right people going to be working on this with us? Whether it's a consulting assignment, a 6-month job or a 12-month job, or for the next 5 or 10 years. So outsourcing is, I think, in large respect, kind of what Liz was describing her relationship is with her clients. Not so much project oriented, but longer term outsourced.
Yeah, let's talk about outsourcing. This is a great segue. Obviously, family offices can't do it all, shouldn't do it all. So when should firms think about, kind of a two-parter question, right? When should firms think about outsourcing? What should they think about outsourcing? And then I want to get into a little bit later about how they manage that outsourcing. But let's talk about just like, hey, what should you outsource, and how do you come about that decision?
There's the 3 elements, right? There's cost, there's time, and there's quality, right? So generally you say, well, you can have 2 out of 3. You can't have all 3. House to do this, right? In our small business, which, by the way, is what most single family offices, you could characterize them as small business. And I think that is a fair characterization of Liz's clients too, small businesses. You can go out in the marketplace and buy this for a certain price, or you can build it yourself in-house by hiring people and getting the tools to deliver it, whatever it is. Liz mentioned bookkeeping or accounting or financial reporting or risk management. The activities, the business activities that can be outsourced are really limitless.
Yeah.
And so the most decision making comes down to dollars and cents, and how, what's the lowest cost solution to get me the highest quality fastest. That's basically the way people go at that decision making. And if you've got a core capability, that's your small office, your principal was a very successful hedge fund guy and wants to do all his own investing, right? And you've got your financial house in order, but you need some sort of admin, right? Some fund admin, right? To actually handle all the transactions and managing all that. Well, look, that makes sense to outsource that as opposed to building that sort of capability in-house. And I think that people in business, people who have been successful entrepreneurs who have built businesses and been through it, they know that they shouldn't try to do everything themselves. They should actually focus on where they add value. And then outsource or sent to somebody else those parts of the business activity that are not in their core capability and maybe not even interesting to them, but need to be done. So I think it's a kind of decision that sometimes it's forced on family offices because they've grown organically. And, we got Jon over there doing things. His mandate has expanded over the years. He's been with us 17 years now. And, it was great back in the day, but, we're sort of outgrowing that. So what should we do? Right. And that's tough. Those are tough decisions because you're talking about people inside an organization that maybe have to be retrained to do something else, or maybe let go. And that's hard. And at least in my experience, it's been unusual and difficult, a difficult decision to make when it was made, but usually not made to let staff go. Usually family offices find a way to, repurpose,
redeploy those
their team members. Yeah. Family office industry, at least in the community that I've worked in over the years, there's a lot of loyalty between principals and the staff, and it goes both ways. And that's sort of because it's a very service oriented business. That's the reason I think that I've enjoyed working in that business all these years.
Yeah, I mean, trust and loyalty is there's a premium for that, especially between the family and the family office, and that's odds that staff brings. I think, even a large family office, to your point, is a small organization, and you can't do everything, and sometimes it is hard because people are impacted. But to take a look at, to your point, is like, what are your centers of excellence? What are you good at? And then those areas where maybe you're not as good at, that they consider outsourcing in those areas, and to your point, like redeploying those. Hey, maybe you're not really great at back office or operations. Maybe you need to reconcile more than once a month. Like you maybe should take a look at, because so many vendors today actually provide their services on a continuum of outsourcing, from completely outsourced to just components of it, and you can right size that based on that. I also think the other thing too is like taking a look at, what is maybe kind of repetitive, low value tasks that can maybe be offshored or outsourced on a more cost effective basis. So then those resources can be redeployed towards more family facing, higher value type of activities, right? Instead of banging in data, maybe you can spend more time looking at that data and saying, why do we have so much cash? Versus just trying to find out what the cash balance is, right? So you see that quite a bit, and like it's hard because they need to make a decision that can impact people, and certainly, I think in most cases they can be redeployed, but there is certainly it is people, process, and technology, right? And they all,
and we know, Mark, that people, generally speaking, the personnel will account for somewhere between 60 and 80%.
Yeah, right. The biggest
of OpEx, right, in the family office. So a huge part of the burden, financial burden, are the people. Can't do it without them.
Yeah, no. How can family offices look to, in terms of benchmarking, Jon? What should they be thinking about in terms of how that family office should benchmark against other, against their peers?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there are lots of ways to look at that. I think that one benchmark or set of benchmarks that's really interesting to family offices, especially executives and principals, is compensation. And there's a lot of work that's been done. I mean, on this topic over the years, surveys, and I think that Trish Botoff is probably the top thinker and doer in this area around compensation benchmarking, and so that's one area where we're developing a really good data set, and people understand that different parts of the country have different standards of living, and so you don't have to pay the same for a CFO in Lincoln, Nebraska that you do in Manhattan, And so the nuances are starting to come in. So really, as I mentioned earlier, the compensation is generally somewhere between 60 and 80% of total OpEx in a single family office.
Mhm.
And so compensation matters, and having and fairly paying your people is frankly the best way to keep them around.
Right.
Because if you underpay them, and the market goes, buyer's market, seller's market. I mean, it's it depends on where you are in the cycle. But believe me, good people, quality people will always find.
Yeah, attracting and retaining staff consistently ranks as, if it's not the number one issue, it's number two, right? For these.
Yeah, in terms of managing risk, I mean, talk about the risk to a small office to lose your CFO, right?
Yeah.
Or to lose your president,
Right.
right? Because all of that knowledge, all that history just goes out the door with them. And generally speaking, things are not as well documented
Right.
as we might hope, right? So compensation is one area, Mark. Another area is, of course, your field, which is technology, and looking at technology from the different perspectives of, an integration, an integrated sort of one-stop shop kind of an approach versus what you might call a co-ledger or a best-in-breed
Best of breed.
type of an approach, right? Which is, finding the best tools and then making sure that they connect. And it's not that one is good and the other is bad. They're both excellent solutions depending upon requirements, right? And what the objectives are longer term, not just the immediate requirements to replace some system, but what the objectives are from a business standpoint longer term. So benchmarking and understanding the KPIs around technology and its use in the family office is key. I had an opportunity to write up the results of a survey that the Forge community did.
Yeah.
I think it was like 186 Forge community members who participated in the survey and wrote up and produced a report that really got into the depths. And so if any of your listeners or watchers out are not members of Forge community and they're a single family office, definitely check them out and get that report. But in addition to technology and thinking about the types of systems that you're using, operations and risk management is another great area for benchmarking and KPIs. So, for instance, Fund Count has done a study on risk management KPIs. Asset Vantage, another sort of full service provider like Fund, just issued a handbook that is filled with what I would call best practices. So there's a lot of information out there around in the community that's available to people, and that's sort of driving me and the Family Office Project is to read stuff that other people don't necessarily have time to read. I'm not going to be a too long didn't read type thing, but I do want to make sure that people are aware of the resources and the information that is available in the marketplace.
I think Forge is a great one, right? That you have a peer community, that peer community is doing some surveying and benchmarking. That's a great way in a kind of safe environment to be able to get some good information. So I think that's a good example.
And I mean, at Fox, Kent Lawson over there is doing an awesome job, gathering up data for family offices. I mean, there's a list of groups, people that are doing this kind. Tanya Neal doing an awesome job. Just did a really great report for called My FO Tech.
They just rebranded My FO Tech, which is now My FO Hub.
My FO Hub.
Adriana, they're great.
Adriana, Zaluka, and Alex. So there is so much available, but it's hard to get your arms around the body of knowledge. And look, I'm a guy that kind of understands where to go to look for things and what things mean. And struggling with, how do we make sense of this and make it available? So that's sort of what the family office project is, or one of the things we're going to do.
So let's just shift gears a little bit. Obviously, there's the change in technology is happening really fast. And how is the current technology revolution impacting or not impacting the family office space?
I think that there's a lot of buzz flying around about artificial intelligence. AI is happening, and it's happening in ways that are surprising, I think, to a lot of us, and will be a part of the technology stack from now on, right? So there's just we're getting around that, right? It's going to be part of the way we interact with one another through technology. There's no question in that. An example of that is that back in the day, we used to talk about, let's get the reports. Yeah, let's get the reports. And we got the reports from the computer center, like back when you had a computer center, you had to go down and get them, or out of your system, right? Let's print them out on the printer. And we sort of went from get the reports to, hey, let's produce a dashboard. And we've got everything laid out. When you get your cup of coffee in the morning, what do you want to look at, right? And kind of go through the dashboard as a way to support the executive or the user through their day, right? Now, we've gone beyond both of those. They're still important. They're still elements of the communication technology, but now we're into prompt. So what's the right prompt to get what I want? And if it's getting me what I want, then I'm going to save it. I'm going to run it every day or whatever, right? So there is a transition that's going on that is going to change the way that executives interact, and all users really interact with their technology. And what it is, Mark, it's almost like, in addition to people, process, and technology, we need to add a fourth leg on the stool, and maybe that is called data. And the data and data management now are going to be more and more important than ever before. It used to be, hey, where's my data? I want to control my data. If we quit this using you as a provider, we quit this system, can I get my data, and escrow it and all that other stuff. I remember all the, challenges there were to solving that problem, making sure that everybody felt comfortable about their data. Well, now the data set has expanded beyond just the numbers in the ledger. The data set has expanded to include all of those documents that have either support or cause those entries into these ledgers, whether they're investment ledgers or financial ledgers or other types of miscellaneous ledgers. And all of that then becomes part of the data set that is available for these prompts that then can extract or get answers to the questions they're asking. And that's a transformation. That's huge. And I don't think that people really understand that yet, because it's not here yet. But eventually it will be here. And people will.
Well, you know what they say, John, that the future is unevenly distributed. The future's here. It's just unevenly distributed, right?
True.
But there is pieces where the technologies here. I mean, you do a Google search, and now you see what AI is providing you, results first before anything else, which I find is interesting. I do think too that AI is probably one of the biggest things is unlocking unstructured data, right? So
exactly, that's what I was trying to say.
Data is the new oil, right? But so much data has been locked up in these documents and really not accessible out of a way that you can kind of harvest it at scale. And AI is really great at it. But I also think the concern is that family offices need to have probably some sort of AI policy because you have open AI, you have closed AI. I mean, OpenAI just came out with a new version that can be closed on an enterprise level. So there it is a new frontier, but it is an exciting time that how much I think is like 70 or 80% of the world's information is unstructured, right? It's in documents and family offices are no different, right? Capital calls. I mean, the whole alternative investment industries, basically.
I mean, most people use email as
Yeah,
a
a
as a
lot of that, right?
repository.
Right.
As a like, let me go find that mail from so and so from 2021 about the Black Swan deal, right? And oh, there it is, right? So all of that is going,
Yeah.
and that's the power of it. And Mark, you're right; it's unevenly distributed, and there's going to need to be controls around it. But and also, AI is not flawless.
Right.
I mean, it hallucinates from time to time, and will probably continue to hallucinate until some time from today, right? So somebody's got to make sure that what they're reading, they can't just accept it and go with it. They've got to make sure that go back and check the sources on that, the citations on that. So there's going to be huge benefits to AI, but there's also going to be additional costs related to it because people are going to need to be careful that they really understand what the results are that are being delivered to them.
Certainly an exciting time, but certainly a time where people need to be. I think a heavy degree of skepticism is well in order. I want to just,
and also, Mark, let me just say, in addition to that, in addition to skepticism, it's also having a point of view on what your policy is.
Having a policy, yeah,
it's true, right? And that should be at the family council level or at the board of directors level, or at least at the CEO level, to ensure that you have thought it all the way through and you got it under control.
So, Jon, you were part of one of the first multifamily offices in the country with GenSpring, right? And obviously, I think the multifamily office model, even the single family office, like what I'm seeing from reports is that they're expecting that there's rapid growth with single family offices, expecting doubling and tripling of that. It does seem like the family office model, whether it be the private family office and a commercial family office, like a winning model. But where, give me a little bit of perspective about, because you've seen this long arc, maybe a little bit longer than some other folks, because you've been at it from the genesis there. Where do you see the industry heading, and what lessons should be learning from the past?
Yeah, I have been involved in the family office industry since 1994. And I was lucky enough to be hired as a CFO at Asset Management Advisors. That was the name of the firm in those days in Jupiter, Florida. The Perrys, Hap and Ellen Perry, were the owners of it. And I became a small owner over time. And Jay Hughes was on the board of directors. So almost 30 years ago this month, I had my first encounter with Jay Hughes in a directors meeting. In 2003, AMA was on the list of the top 10 multifamily offices, the Bloomberg list. And of course, AMA is gone now. It became GenSpring. And now it's the banks that, SunTrust Bank owned it and then became Truist Bank. Now I think SunTrust combined with another bank. When I look back, I just happen to have that Bloomberg MFO study from 2003. I looked at it and there's Rockefeller, right, is on there. Bessemer is on there. Oxford Financial is on there. Those are the only three out of the top 10 that are still have their own name. So to answer your question, I think in the long run, firms get created and they get rolled up. They get merged into larger firms. And I think in just looking at Bessemer, they had 40 billion, I guess, under management in 2003. Today it's 200 billion. So the big are going to keep getting bigger, I think. Doesn't mean there's not room for new enterprise. Absolutely is. And in fact, I think what I've seen over the course of the last 30 years is the family office model becoming more of a retail offering. Then you don't need to be a billionaire to get the
being able to bring those
array of services. Now, you're not going to get the same sort of customization, or in the case of a family, single family, also you're really getting custom, you're getting personalized service, right, to whatever you want as an individual. But that's the way the industry is moving, and they have, all of the big firms, all the big banks have adopted this model and are pursuing it because rich folks have businesses, and they can influence other other people to use the services that you're offering. So there's a lot of reasons why the financial institutions want to attract this segment. Very, very, and I can't remember exactly the number, Mark, but I read the other day that assets under management in the family office industry now exceed, they're in the trillions, I don't know, 6 or 7 trillion or something, exceed of the hedge fund industry.
Oh, really? Great stat.
Yeah. So I think, over the long haul, consolidation, right? Rolling up and smaller firms into larger firms, and also sort of the retail
democratization of
commoditization of investment management these days. It's almost a commodity,
right?
And the way you differentiate your offering is through these specialized services.
Family office,
financial planning, right? Family office services. And everybody doesn't need to walk the dog. A lot of people say, well, we don't walk the dog, but they do a whole array of financial and investment, and
they do trust. Hire the dog walker and do a background check on the dog walker.
And they'll make sure that that all the services are being provided to all the homes around the world and so forth. So it is, I think, a growth segment, and will continue to be a growth segment throughout the rest of my lifetime, and probably the rest of yours, Mark. Right. Yeah.
It's the winning model. It's great to see. This conversation has been great. I just want to wrap it up on a little bit of a more of a personal note. Portugal versus the U.S. Tell me, what's it like to live in Portugal? What do you miss about the U.S.? Tell me a little bit about that. Kind of compare the two.
Sure. So Portugal, small country, 10 million people. That's it. Very homogeneous. Largest immigrant group in Portugal are the Brazilians. And Americans make up they don't even make the top 10 in terms of immigrants. Okay. But a very active expat community here in Lisbon. The country itself, half of its national border is on the ocean. Okay. So half of it is coastline. The other half of it borders Spain, which is not a bad border to have. The cuisine appeals to a lot of people. It's a very healthy cuisine. There's a lot of fish because of the maritime. There's a lot of what I would call like fresh fruits, vegetables, that sort of. So it's healthy living. How about that? The temperature north to south, colder in the north. Get a little up in the mountains. You get some flurries and stuff. As you head south, you hit the Algarves, and that is warm weather. Almost year round. So it's a great country. We live in Lisbon. We live in an urban environment, and that's, from my point of view, the best place to retire is to an urban environment.
You do a lot of walking.
Well, yeah, and great public transportation. A lot like Manhattan. You got your neighborhood, you got your box, and everything's inside this box. You can do everything you need to do within 2 blocks this way, 4 blocks that way. Compared to the U.S., it is cheaper to live here. Not crazy cheaper, but it's cheaper. Compared to the EU, it's cheaper. So like when we go to Spain, we go, whoa, the prices, these meals cost more here than they did back home. But one of the things the Portuguese people are lovely people, very open, very warm, they're not an angry, threatening crowd. They're very, very mellow, very chill, and it's just a great environment to be here. And the government now is offering subsidies to attract Portuguese young people back to Portugal.
Oh, okay.
So giving them subsidies for housing,
To reintegrate that. Yeah.
yeah, to inspire them to come back, because the standard of living is a little bit lower here, and therefore if you get an education, you're an engineer or something, you immediately go to the Netherlands and make more money, right?
Yeah.
Than you could. It's a great place to live as a retiree.
I love it. I love Europe, and spend some time in Italy, and the food's great. You always feel better. One thing would miss, would drive me crazy, would be lack of Dunkin' Donuts and not being able to get. Well, this has been a great conversation. It's been fun to be able to connect again with you guys, and I think there's been a lot of great insights here, and I really appreciate you guys sharing.